Hey everybody, welcome to Three Things You Must Do Before You Write Your First Book, and I'm your host, George Ira Carroll. So let's get right into it, no fluff, here you are, and I just want to share a little bit about me. I won't spend a ton of time on my life story, but just kind of share with you who I am now, and now more than anything, I'm a husband. I'm also a new father to a young man named Callan Fox Carroll, who has become the love of our lives. You can see in these pictures, he's just so sweet. And all of you who are parents, you probably know what I'm talking about. And if you don't have kids, just know that there's a level of love and sweetness that you have yet to experience. So fully in love with this little man, and I'm also an entrepreneur. I'm a speaker, trainer for corporations and companies. I'm also an author of 3 books, which I'll talk a little bit about today. And I travel around the country, and I speak to audiences large and small sometimes, and do anywhere from 30-minute talks all the way up to full-day trainings, as well as consult with CEOs and executives. And becoming an executive coach is one of the things that has recently shifted in my business, but all of it started with writing my first book, and that's really why we're here. So wherever you are right now in the world, thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time and the energy to spend your time with us and to spend your mental energy with us. And I invite you just to kind of be present with this video, with this webinar, so that you can get the most out of it. Because if you do have a book in you and you know that it's time to begin allowing it to come through you, the information on this webinar will help you get off to a really great start. And so being an entrepreneur for the last 7 years, one of my passions is helping aspiring first-time authors become published authors. And so what you can take away, or at least plan to take away from this webinar, is you'll learn how to anticipate roadblocks by learning the 7 deadly excuses of book writing. So what I've discovered over the years of writing books is that there are 7 common excuses that most aspiring first-time authors use to keep themselves from being published. And so if you are an aspiring author who knows that the book is about to come through you, this is a great way to anticipate your journey a little bit more by knowing what are some of the internal blocks, the internal enemies that will show up along the way that you can anticipate. And when they show up, you'll know how to move past them. The second thing we're going to take a look at is the number 1 reason why most people who start writing their book don't finish, and how to overcome that. The next thing we'll look at is one weird little mental trick that you can use to keep you inspired throughout the writing process. You'll also get my step-by-step schedule to keep your book on track and on progress and take it from start to finish. And then you'll learn the 3 things that you must do before you start writing your first book. So just want to take a moment and say welcome to all the Become a Published Author in 126 Days Mastermind members. This mastermind has been running for almost 2 years now, and we are over 70 strong. So just want to welcome you. And guys, this is actually the preparation training that I send to my members before we launch, and we launch our next 126-day round on May 5th. So this video and this webinar that you're watching right here is the prep webinar that they're also going to get and watch to prepare them to step into the journey of writing a book, because it's not easy. I wish I could tell you that it was, for some people it is. You'll be surprised with how quickly some people finish their book. There's been a couple people who wrote it within 126 days, and I'll show you some of the published authors that have come through the program. But you can become a published author, and it doesn't have to be complex, but I will tell you that it will most likely challenge you. It will most likely bring up a lot of fears and limitations and patterns that may have been living dormant for a while, that the process of writing a book simply brings up for you. And that's one of the things I love so much about this program, is that it's a transformational journey as well. And so I started my author career, if you will, by contributing a chapter to these 2 books in 2011. The book on the left you see is called Ordinary Man, Extraordinary Lives, Defining Moments. And my good friend and colleague Jim Sharon wrote it. And it's basically a book like Chicken Soup for the Soul, a bunch of stories compiled together to create an anthology. And I wrote a chapter in there called The Fallen Soldier Arises. And that was really cool, because I got to get a taste of what it was like to actually write something that was going to be published inside of a book. And it was really exciting. It was pretty cool. I didn't even, it was so new to me. I was just excited. I was just kind of like, oh, okay, this is cool. I'm a published author. I'm a published author. And then the second book that I contributed a chapter to was called Soulful Marketing. Soulful Marketing was written by Andrea Constantine, and she's really brilliant. If you don't know Andrea, I highly recommend connecting with her. Just a really sweet, really brilliant, really authentic, and a woman who operates from a level of integrity that, is uncommon in our space and a lot of the world these days. And so it was an honor to be part of her book and share a chapter on how to develop a rapport and connect with others quickly. And after I wrote the 2 chapters in these books, I thought I was going to be maybe more excited or enthusiastic about being a published author, but there was just something that I couldn't get past. When I look at the covers of these books, I see 2 really amazing people, and in there somewhere is my small chapter. And it just felt like that even though it was a great platform for me to jump off of, it was a great place for me to jump from into writing my own book, it just didn't feel fulfilling. It didn't feel that level of satisfaction that I thought I would have, and that's because I had to face, one reality is that this wasn't my book. I was simply a part of these people's books. And so it was sort of a false sense of celebration for me after a little while because I couldn't promote it as my own. I couldn't use it or market it as my own in order to, gain speaking engagements, which is, what a lot of my business is about, and how I strategize in my business is how do I take content and information like a book and position it and me in a way that allows me to look like the expert and authority or specialist on my topic, and I'll show you how here on this webinar. And then after that, in 2000 and, in a moment I'm going to share a little bit more about Joseph Campbell. In 2014, it was when I published my first book, which I'm going to tell you a little bit about. So I call it A Hero's Journey because there was a man by the name of Joseph Campbell who was an American mythologist. He wrote a book called The Hero with a Thousand Faces, and he made famous this story structure or this story template that you see in a lot of movies like Star Wars or The Matrix or basically any movie where there's a hero and a villain and an adventure in between where the hero goes through this transformational journey to get to this new place. And so I'm going to share a little bit about it and the model of it because it really does relate to writing a book. When you go to write a book, I wish I could tell you it's just butterflies and ponies and puppies and baby rabbits and little kids, but it's not. It's challenging, and there are internal demons and patterns that show up that will try to distract you and knock you off your path. And if you can learn how to anticipate that journey, to know that when I step on this path and start writing my book and choose to become a published author, that there are going to be certain internal demons that show up, and if I can anticipate them, then I can better equip myself for the journey. So just a quick overview of Joseph Campbell's model. The first step is the ordinary world, and this is where you're bored. This is where you're like, something else has got to be possible here. You're just not excited, you're not expanding, you're not growing in any way, and it's almost like, okay, there's got to be something else greater than this. And then at some point along the way, you get a call to adventure. Something happens in your world, someone shows up in your life, and all of a sudden there's an opening to go on a great adventure. And then because the adventure seems so daunting and so daring and so fearful, a lot of times we refuse the call. We say, no, that's really not something that I want to do. No, I think, I'll refuse it. And then there's the meeting with the mentor. And maybe you consider this webinar, this video, a meeting with a mentor where I'll share with you the 3 things that you got to do before you start writing your first book. But along the way, you meet a mentor. You meet somebody who gives you a piece of advice or a piece of wisdom, and it kind of gives you just enough nudge for you to cross the threshold. And so the threshold is entering that world of writing your first book. And then along the way, you're going to experience the tests and the allies and the enemies. You're going to find people who can support you. You're going to find situations that are going to test your courage, that are going to test your commitment level. And you're going to find that there are internal enemies, fear of perfection, fear of getting it wrong, fear of not getting it right. All these internal enemies that show up along the way as well. And as you continue to dive deeper and deeper into the process, a lot of times along the way there's this big transformational ordeal. This is like the fight between good and evil. And as you come out of the ordeal, the reward awaits you as you continue moving forward and writing your book and then publishing your book. And on that road back, a lot of times what happens is there's a death that happens. And it's usually a death of an old part of us, or a death of an ego, or a death of a part of us or a pattern of us that's not serving us anymore. And after that becomes a resurrection. A new version of you is birthed, and from that you return with the elixir. And in this hero's journey of become a published author in 126 days, the elixir is your book. So you get to go on this transformational journey and return back into the world with your book. And so there's a lot of parallels that I see with Joseph Campbell's model here and the process of writing a book. And that's why I call it a hero's journey, because it will challenge you, it will expand you, and it will invite you to become a greater version of you. So I want to give you a quick warning. There's some foul language ahead. I'm going to share with you the text of an email that I received from a gentleman who was what I thought a colleague, in the world of being a change agent, a brother in the change agent family, if you will. And just before I launched my book, I was getting a lot of emails from him, and I just sent him a simple email that said, please unsubscribe me, and he sent me this email. So as you read this, just know that there's some foul language in it, and I'll give you a minute, and if you're watching the recording, go ahead and pause it. So you can take some time to over the recording to read it, or you can even screenshot this and read it. But basically you see this person send me this really nasty email and using a lot of low blows, and it was interesting because I actually hired this person to help me with some internal demons of my own along the way. I saw him as a healer, as a change agent, as somebody who could support me on my journey. And you can see in there that he used some of the things that I told him in our session against me. Some of my insecurities and some of my fears that really hit hard for me, and it hurt. And I received this email 2 days before I actually became a published author. I was literally getting ready to click the publish button in the software that you'll be learning with CreateSpace, and I was ready to hit the publish button, and I got this email, and I shrunk. And I was like, oh man, because my pattern, and that's what you'll love about writing your book, my pattern was to shrink. Anytime I got fluff, or anytime I got, I upset somebody else, my pattern was, how small can I play so that I don't upset them anymore? And so once I realized that, I said, wait a damn minute here. Wait one damn minute. I said, this is my pattern. It's like just before I'm ready to step out and shine in a bigger way, I upset somebody, or somebody gets triggered by me, and all of a sudden I make myself wrong for it, shrink myself so that I don't upset them anymore. And once I saw that in this moment, I said, you know what? I said, F that. I said, I'm coming out, and I'm going to publish my book, and I'm not going to let anything stop me moving forward. And this was, less than 2 years ago, and so I said, screw it. I hit the publish button. I published my book, and I said, fuck it. I'm coming out. Excuse my French. And I published my book August 29th of 2014, and that was the beginning of a whirlwind of miracles, opportunities, and possibilities that I had no idea were going to show up. So I published my book, and in October I had a bunch of people take selfies of themselves with my book, which is such an amazing feeling when you launch your first book, and you get all these people sending you the love. At a book launch party where a bunch of people showed up, and I signed books and I gave hugs, and it was just an amazing experience. To launch your own book and to have your own book in your hand is one of the most beautiful journeys you'll ever go on, because it will transform you. It'll expand you in so many amazing ways. So I had an opportunity to do a 90-minute talk with an audience that came to watch watch the presentations from my book launch party, and it was so cool because people I hadn't seen forever showed up, and it was just an amazing experience in Denver, Colorado. And then after that, I decided in February 2015 I wanted to publish another book. So in a very short period of time, I wrote my second book, Developing a Healthy Relationship with Money, a guide for college students. And with this book, was my second book, was really the intention was to write a book for high school and college kids who have never been taught financial management and managing their own money and saving and investing and all of that stuff, and just give them some simple tools and concepts to help them become better money managers when they left, because I was somebody who, my parents loved them to death, but they struggled with money. They went through bankruptcy, and by the time I was 29, I believe, I went through bankruptcy, and it was a really challenging thing for me because I just didn't have the money skills. So after I, that was over, 6-7 years ago, and after bringing my life back, you know, I thought, heck, I'll write a book and share what my experiences have been in hopes that it helps kids along the way. And then I wrote my third book in December 2015 was when it published. And now this is one of the books that I lead with my speaking business. So this is a banner that was made by my graphic designer, Stephanie Hunt Ingram. She's an amazing graphic designer. And she put this together, and now my speaking business, you know, if you are interested in speaking more, you know, and getting in front of an audience and sharing your message even more with them, this is one of the most powerful ways to do it, because you get the opportunity to utilize your content, your information in a book, and now people are booking you all over the country. You know, I went from in 2014, when I wasn't a published author, until August, I had 14 speaking engagements that whole year. And then in 2015, or 2016, wait a minute, 2015 was when I had 2014, I had 14 speaking engagements. 2015, after I published my first book, I ended up having 81 paid speaking engagements all around the country. And so this is the third book that I have, and it's geared more toward the corporate audience. And so I've got an entire business model developed for the corporate world, and this is the book that leads me in that direction. And so now I speak and train in front of large and small, you know, audiences to help them become more productive, to help their managers become better leaders, and really to help awaken people to this idea that, hey, like, we can create something great if we work together. So it's an amazing industry that we're in as change agents, being an author or a teacher or a facilitator. So you're probably on this webinar because maybe you are a facilitator. Maybe you are a speaker or a trainer, or maybe you want to be. And I will tell you from my experience alone that the fastest path to tap into this market is to write a book, because when you write a book, you become the author of a topic. And when you become the author of a topic, you become the expert in the topic. You become an authority in that area. And there's so much room here, guys, because most people are so afraid to write their own book that they'll never do it. So when you decide to do it and you get it done and you publish it, you now are part of a fraternity or a sorority, if you will, of a small percentage of change agents who actually decided to write their book. And so I personally obviously love the book writing process, not only because it's transformational, but because it will open so many doors if you go look for them. It will open so many doors. And so, like I said, you know, I went from 14 speaking engagements to 81 within a year, and a big part of that was becoming a published author. And the reason why is because you become an expert, you become a specialist, you become authority on your topic. And guys, if I can do it, you can become a published author too. And I'm going to share with you here in a little bit the 3 things that you got to do before you start writing your book. And if you take those to heart and you put them to work, you'll see yourself begin to create some kick-ass momentum in the process of writing your book. Most people don't even start because they don't even know where to begin. It's such a complex thing. When I first wrote my first book, I spent way too much time researching, when really I didn't realize how simple the process was, the step-by-step process that I'm going to teach you in this webinar. I had no idea how simple it was. Now, it's not easy. I'm not going to say that it's easy, but the steps are simple if you're willing to go through them. So guys, if I can do it, you can do it. And so I think the biggest secret to becoming a published author, this is something that you're going to want to write down somewhere. The biggest secret, people always ask, well, what's the secret, George? What's the secret to taking your book from idea to reality? The secret is actually very simple. It's easy in concept, but challenging in practice. It's easy in concept, but can be challenging in practice. And the top secret is this. When you embody choice, when you make the choice to write your book, you say, you know what, this is the year I write my book. This is the year I write my book. Not next year. I'm done waiting. I've been thinking about this book for a year, for 2 years, for 3 years. I've been thinking about this book forever. I'm done waiting. I'm making the choice to write it now. And you back that choice by commitment, you will become a published author. Commitment is what transforms a promise into reality, says Abraham Lincoln. So when you make the choice and you commit to it, regardless of whether it takes you 100 days, I've had an author come through the program, 126-day program, write it in and publish it within 115 days. she made the choice and she was committed. I had an author come through my first round of this mastermind, and she wrote it literally in 126 days on the dot. She made the choice and she got committed. The people who make the choice and get committed are the people who become published, because it's not easy, but it is simple if you make the commitment. But first you got to make that choice. So that's the secret, and I wish it was, you know, a little sexier than that, but it's really not. It's just, you just got to choose it, and then you got to go until it's done. And that's why I created Become a Published Author in 126 days, to give people a container and a step-by-step call structure and template that they can use to get all the information they need in order to take their book from concept to published. And it goes back to the story about Cortez. Cortez was a leader of the conquistadors back in the day, and they were going over to take over land, and there were 3 ships that they all came over in. And as they quietly came onto the land, and you know, the ships were sort of parked there, if you will, on the shore, all the men start moving into this new territory that they're in. And as they move in, Cortez, the leader of the conquistadors, sits back. And as the men begin to infiltrate the land, he sits back and he lights the boats on fire. And as he lights the boats on fire, they go up into flames. His men look back and he says, "Cortez, what are you doing?" He said, "Why are you lighting the boats on fire?" And Cortez said something very simple and very powerful. He said, "Either we win or we die." And that's what commitment is. It's burning the boats. It's being willing to say, I'm going to burn my excuses. I'm done making excuses for myself of why my book's not done. I'm done making those excuses. And you know what? It's time for me to step into a level of commitment that I never have. And remember, if you are on this call and you are a member of Become a Published Author in 126 days, being committed simply means never giving up. So if you make the choice and you just keep going, and when you jump into Become a Published Author in 126 days, there's a whole group, a whole global community there wanting to support you as you move through the process. And there are 3 levels of accountability, and it allows you to get plugged in to a sort of a space where everybody is on the same journey you are. And studies show, which I'll show you here in a moment, studies show that you are more likely to complete a project if you're surrounded by others doing something very similar to you. So you got to burn the boats, my friends. Like, where is it that you still got plan B waiting in the background? When it comes to writing your book, you got to make the commitment. You got to burn the boats. Burn the boats. So let's get into some more of this content. 7 deadly excuses that people stop people from publishing their book. The first one is the fear that it won't be perfect or good enough. It won't be. Like, it's not going to be perfect. Like, there is no perfect book out there. You know, the thing is that you're creating something that doesn't exist on planet Earth. There is no version of it to compare it to. So the actual fear itself is invalid because you're creating something that doesn't exist. Perfection and good enough can only exist through comparison. And because you have nothing to compare it to, the fear is simply false. Number 2 is the lie that you don't have anything valuable to say. Here's what I say to that. I say, look at your life experience. Take it all the things that have happened in your life, all the trials and tribulations, all the triumphs, and just take a look at the rest of the world. Has anybody gone through what you've gone through? Nobody on planet Earth has been through the combination of life experiences that you've been through. And because of that, nobody has the combination of wisdom, awareness, and knowledge that you have. Nobody, write this one down, nobody knows what you know like you know it. Nobody knows what we know like we know it. We're the only one that knows what we know in the way that we know it. And because it's so unique, it's immediately valuable. You just have to be valued of yourself and value your story, value your content in a way that allows you to stand behind it and be confident about it. Remember, nobody knows what you know like you know it. Number 3 is the fear of being seen or judged. Sorry to tell you folks, but you're already being judged, by a lot of people, maybe a lot of people close to you. The more you step out, the more you're going to be judged. But you got to remember, you're being judged now. There's no way to avoid judgment. And if you can learn how to receive judgment, dance with judgment, play with judgment, and use it to your advantage, it will continue to expand you. So let me ask you a question. Would you rather play small for the rest of your life and try to avoid as much judgment as you can, or would you rather step out and learn to receive judgment in a way that doesn't impact you at all anymore? Number 4 is no support system. So you know the feeling. You've probably been at that place where you get excited, you get the download, you get the hit, you're like, okay, time to write my book. And so all of a sudden you get out your journal, you start writing, you start jotting down ideas, you open your computer, you put all kinds of notes, you start doing research. And because, number one, you don't know where to start, what happens is that inspiration dies down, because the minute you hit a block, the minute you hit an internal enemy or an internal block, what happens is people will say, oh, just no biggie, I just work on this tomorrow. Tomorrow turns into next week turns into next month turns into next year turns into next decade, and you still haven't written your book. What will help you stay committed to the process of writing your book is plugging yourself into a support system where people will hold you accountable and where you have a higher chance of publishing your book by being accountable to your own book. So number 5 is the excuse of I don't know how. The thing is that I had this same excuse when I first started my book. I was like, okay, where do I start? Do I need to hire a book coach? Do I need to do an editor? What do I need to do here? And as I went through my own process of trial and error and saying, okay, I really don't need that. I don't need that. I do need this. I do need this. I don't need that. I basically said, okay, how can I create a program that gives that cuts the fat in terms of telling people that they need all sorts of different things to publish their book, when in fact you don't need a lot of that. You don't need a lot of things that are being told that you need. So I said, I'm going to create a program that cuts the fat and focuses on the real things that people need in order to write their book based on my own experience. And so it's been so cool to see the authors come through this program, or the aspiring authors come through this program, and many of them become published, and many of them are right there on the cusp. It's an exciting time. Number 6 is no vision, target, or outcome. I'm going to address that in this webinar, but the key is, guys, you want to begin with the end in mind. Like, you want to know where you're going. You want to have a vision of where you're headed, and I'll tell you why that's important in a moment. And finally, no structure. No structure. Now, you're taking an idea, which is kind of this, non-tangible thing, this concept that is your book, and you want to literally create it and actualize it into a physical, living thing that you can touch and smell. Now, that requires structure, and a lot of times what creative people will do is they'll start writing, but because there's no template, there's no structure for their book, they start to write off into a creative world, and they don't know how to organize the information in a way that allows whoever's going to read your book to read it in a way that's easy for them. So I guess number 7 is not being able to structure your information, your content, your story in a way that's readable. So those are the 7 biggest excuses, and there's a silent killer in all of this too. I'll just tell you, there's a silent killer in all of this. It's trying to get your book to fit in, like our cat friend here, trying to fit in with these penguins. It's trying to make your book fit in is basically it's almost an oxymoron, because your book, it's impossible for your book to fit in. Your book is something that doesn't exist on planet Earth, and as a result of that, it's going to be in a league of its own. Sure, it's going to have categories that it's going to be in, but if you are secretly trying to get your book to fit into this world, you're going to slow yourself down. So the key is to know and remember that you're creating something unique that doesn't exist on the planet, and your job is to pave its way out into this world. So are you willing to use the book and the writing process to go beyond these limits? That's a question you want to begin asking yourself. Are you willing to use the book writing process to go beyond these limits that we're talking about here? And if you are, just like these people were, like Amy Eudice McBain was in my first mastermind. She published her book Intentional Orgasm in 126 days. Kim Louise Morrison wrote From Black and White to Technicolor, and she was in the second round of the mastermind, I believe, before she published her book. So she didn't get it done in the first round. She got it done in the second round, but she didn't give up. She stayed committed. Amelia Cohn wrote her book Red Dread Dream, and she published her book in the second round as well. Celeste O'Brien joined us, and this is a great story. Celeste O'Brien joined us in the first round, and she had her book, her proof is all in. The book is called All In, and her proof is all in. And so she's in the editing process of finalizing her book and getting it out into the world, but she stayed committed. She hasn't given up, and that's the key. That's what commitment is, just the willingness to not give up, guys. And then here's Belinda Bennett's book, From Fear to Love. She wrote this book in 115, published it in 115 days, and she's had book signings, she's had, I think, book launch parties, and it's really fun watching her step into being a published author. Mira Claire wrote a children's book, Have You Ever? And she joined my first mastermind, and I have a feeling there are a lot of children's books within Mira Claire. Also, one of our newest close to being published authors, Trinity Songha, has written a book called Wholehearted Living, and she is right there on the cusp. Right now, she is getting ready to publish. I think she's still in the final phases of editing or formatting, one of the two, but she's right there ready to be a published author. Now, remember, nobody knows what you know like you know it. The combination of experiences and knowledge and wisdom and awareness that you have doesn't exist anywhere else on the planet. Therefore, when you publish your first book, it's going to be something that doesn't exist on the planet. And isn't that exciting, guys? I mean, isn't that so exciting to know that, oh man, I'm going to write something and I'm going to embody it in a book and I'm going to publish it and I'll be a published author. It's so amazing, guys, to see the opportunities and possibilities that can open up when you become a published author. So we just looked at learn how to anticipate roadblocks by learning the 7 deadly excuses of book writing. I circled this one, learn the #1 reason why most people who start writing their book don't finish and how to overcome it, because we're going to cover it the last thing on this webinar. Also, you're going to learn one weird little mental trick that will keep you inspired through the book writing process, and let's talk about that right now. So Belinda Bennett, like I have been talking about, wrote her book From Fear to Love, and the weird little mental trick is what I call your vision story. Now, this is literally creating a story, a future-based story about you becoming a published author, and I teach you how to do it inside of the mastermind. And what Belinda did is she taped her vision story all over her house to keep her inspired, and along the way when she got a little down or she got a little doubt coming through her world, she connected to her vision story, the story of her being a published author in detail, and she read it all the time, and she was the fastest person to publish inside of this mastermind. So the weird little mental trick that you want to use, guys, is begin with the end in mind and literally create a vision or a story of you being a published author and connect to it consistently, because it will pull you in that direction. You know, when I first started my speaking business over 7 years ago, 3 years before that even happened, I was envisioning myself on stages and I was imagining myself in front of audiences, and it was the coolest thing because it gave me the internal vision to know where I was headed, and it allowed me to say, okay, what steps do I need to take in order to allow this thing to become real and true? And same thing goes when you publish your book. When you get clear on the version of you that is a published author and you stay connected to the energy of that story, it will pull you toward it. So that's the one weird little trick that will keep you inspired throughout the process. So write your own personal story of what it would be like to be a published author and read it as often as you can. So here's my step-by-step schedule. And so you can see that the Become a Published Author in 126 days is a 4-phase model. And phase 1 is all about vision and action. So the first call you can see is the program launch. That's where we look at the vision, the outcome, the structure, the process, and the flow. The second call is the outline. So remember we talked about the structure, and having structure is so important to your book. We're going to look at how to create a structure, a flexible writing template that allows you to write more easily throughout the process. And then I'm going to take you on a virtual tour of CreateSpace. It's our primary publishing platform, and you're going to learn the ins and outs of how to take your book from a PDF document all the way to a published piece of magic. And then the next call is a mastermind accountability call. So these are our MAC calls. Our MAC calls are designed to come together and say what's coming up for you internally, and let's blast it away. Because as you go through the process of writing your book, you're inevitably going to hit the internal blocks and barriers. And when they come up, we want to create a space that we can come in and blow them up as much as we can. The key to that is you've got to be willing to be open and vulnerable and transparent and look at whatever it is there that's stopping you. And then in phase 2 is called momentum. That's content creation for the next call, filling your book with valuable content. Sometimes we get stuck as authors and writers because we don't have enough creative ways to create content. So that's really, that's what that call is focused on, is helping you learn how to develop valuable content for your book. The next call is identifying and building skill gaps. There are certain skills that you'll have to identify and learn in the book writing process in order for you to run through the finish line. And one of them is writing. And it's a no-brainer, but writing is one of those things that you have to get good at if you want to become a published author. You got to strengthen your writing skills. Reading is another one of those skills. If you plan on writing a book, become a ferocious reader. It helps activate the creative writing centers in your brain when you read, especially when you're looking at the book from an author standpoint. Next one is the Mastermind Accountability Call. So every month we do a clearing call where we kick limitations butt so that you can keep going. And then phase 3 is editing and course correcting. So I also bring some special experts and some guest trainers inside of the Mastermind. And on July 7th, as you can see, editing alternative publishing options with guest expert, who is Donna Mazzatelli. If you don't know Donna Mazzatelli, she is our editing and publishing guest trainer, and she's available for this call and her services as well. The next one is your bio and your book cover design. So what do you want your book to look like on the outside? What do you want it to say about you? What does your bio look like? So how can we create that? That's what that call is dedicated to. And then we have another clearing call. And then phase 4 is prepare for launch. And now it's all about how to, not only do we become a published author, but how do we get ourselves out there and market ourselves in an effective way. So the next call is marketing and pre-launch strategies. So you're getting ready to launch. How do you pre-market yourself to help people get the word out that, hey, I'm coming out, I'm writing my book. The next one is a training on how to become a bestseller, an Amazon bestseller with Willeen Dunn. She's also a woman I work with in my speaking business. She's just a phenomenal entrepreneur. She's a phenomenal speaker connector, if you will. And she's going to be talking about how to take your book and become a bestseller. The next one is to get on TV with your book with my friend Clint Arthur. And if you don't know Clint Arthur, he runs a program called Instant Local Celebrity, where he teaches you how to get on television, literally Fox and ABC and NBC all over the country, so that you can utilize your book to position you as an expert on TV as well. I worked with Clint, and I ended up getting 3 TV gigs really quickly, and I use them in my marketing. If you go to my website, GeorgeIraCarroll.com, you'll be able to see the videos that I used and spliced into my highlight video, and so it's very valuable training there. And then the next one is how to break into the speaking engagement world, or how to get speaking engagements with my current mentor. His name is James Malinchak. And so he's going to share how to get speaking engagements using your book. And then finally, we're going to celebrate. So these are all the calls that are within the 126-day container that you're going to go through. And if you stay the course and you stay committed, you could be published in 126 days. It's definitely possible. And at the very least, you will have an unstoppable momentum in the process of writing your book by simply staying engaged. All right, so that's the step-by-step schedule to take your book from start to finish. Now let's take a look at the 3 things that you must do before you start writing your book. The first thing is, like we talked about, you got to begin with the end in mind. So in order to, for me, when I first started writing my book, The Homeless Motivational Speaker, I knew that I wanted to take my speaking business to a new level. So that was one of the things, the intentions, if you will, or the outcomes that I created with this begin with the end in mind. I also simply wanted to become a published author. There was a prestige of becoming a published author. And when you have a book out on your brilliance, on your content, your knowledge, you become more of an authority to those people who would consider hiring you. My good friend Jonathan Mansky, I talk about him a lot. When I first started my business, I ran into him at a networking event. I had no idea who he was at the time, just this, real big, nice guy. And the next week, I was at a seminar where I was doing some training, and I saw a book, and it said Law of Attraction Made Simple. And I thought, that sounds interesting. And I turned the book over, and it was a picture of him. John. I said, hey, I just met that guy like last week. So I called him on the phone, had coffee with him. We became good friends. I ended up hiring him to help me overcome some of my internal limitations. And so as a result of him being a published author, I eventually hired him. So people will hire you if you're a coach, or if you're a healer, or a practitioner, or a facilitator, or whatever it is that you're calling yourself these days. If you're one of those things and you help other people, then your book can help you position yourself as an expert on your topic. So another thing that I wanted to do was to get on TV to spread my message, which I did, and to get my message and story out to the world. So those were my 4 primary outcomes when I wrote my first book. What you want to do is get clear on what are your outcomes. Why is it that you want to write your book? And let those things inspire you along the way. the thing number 3, oops, that should say number 2. Thing number 2 is, let me just do this real quick. Stay with me. Okay. Thing number 2 is you got to surround yourself with people who are on the journey. Studies show that you are significantly more likely to complete a project when you surround yourself with others who are on the same or a similar journey as you. I was reading a book called The Power of Habit by Charles, I think his last name is Duhigg, is how you pronounce it. And he talks about the 12-step program and why the 12-step program is so effective at creating habitual changes within these alcoholics. And he said one of the biggest reasons why is because there's weekly accountability. He said, you know, every week you surround yourself with a group of people who are on the same journey. And the reason why there is such a large success rate with AA is because of that same reason. There's accountability. There's sort of that peer effectiveness, if you will, surrounding yourself with others on the same journey as you. And any project that you go on, you are more likely to follow through on the project and the action items than if you went it alone. I mean, I have a good friend of mine and a colleague. His name is David McMurtry. He also has a speaking business, and so we talk every 2 weeks, and we talk about, okay, what are you going after in these 2 weeks? What actions are you committing to take? And then we check in, you know, every day, text message or an email real quick. And then we touch base 2 weeks later. We say, how did you do on your action items? And if you didn't do so well, what do we need to change in order to move you in that direction? And so we have accountability calls every 2 weeks, and it keeps me accountable to the actions that I say that I'm going to take. And as a result of it, you know, my business has blown up as a result of it. And so that can help you with writing your book. When you surround yourself with people who are doing the same thing you are far more likely to finish your book than you are if you just go it alone. All right, so the third thing, the first thing, I got these out of order. So this actually was the third thing. This is thing number 3. And then this is thing number 2. It's supposed to be thing number 2. And then thing number 1 was anticipate the journey. So remember we talked about Joseph Campbell. And his model here is to anticipate the journey. So think of this as thing number 1. Anticipate the journey. And if I would have known that I was going to hit all of my internal demons before I started, I could have anticipated the journey a little bit better, and it wouldn't have taken me 7 months to write my book. It would have taken me probably a lot less. My second book took me 44 days. My first book took me 7 months. So anyway, I digress. That's the key to this piece here, to number 3. Number 3 is to surround yourself with people who are on the same journey. All right, so now this is what I wanted to sort of hold on to the end here is you'll learn the number 1 reason why most people who start writing their book don't finish and how to overcome it. And I'm guessing you probably know the answer to this. The number 1 reason why people who start their book don't finish it, how to overcome it, is this. It's because they don't surround themselves, they don't plug into an accountability and support system. They don't put themselves in a group of people who are on the same journey. They try to go it alone. There's way too much information out there. They don't know where to go. They don't know where to start. They don't know what step to take next. They go into overwhelm, and then they go right back to doing what they've been doing, which is not writing their book because it's comfortable. They know the familiarity of that. So if you want to overcome the number 1 reason why people who start their book don't finish it, you've got to plug yourself into an accountability and support system that can help get you there. So whether it's become a published author in 126 days and you join my group or not, plug yourself into an accountability group, but you also got to make sure that you have the right information in front of you. There's so many different philosophies on how you should write a book, and my philosophy isn't for everybody. I understand that. It's for people who enjoy quickly going through the process and cutting the fat and knowing the step-by-step process you need to take in order for your book to go from start to finish. You know, and it's so cool, the members of Become a Published Author in 126 Days, to see them go from book concept, you know, the idea of their book, into physically holding it is one of the greatest joys I get as being a business owner for this program, is I get to see people physically hold one of their own creations, and there's nothing like it, you know. And even when I was a contributing author to those 2 chapters, I remember it was exciting and there was enthusiasm, but it was almost filtered. It was almost a quieter version of the real enthusiasm I felt when I wrote my own book. Those two creations, meaning contributing a chapter in somebody else's book and then writing your own complete book, two different experiences. And there is a level of joy and excitement that comes with writing your own book that just didn't exist for me in being a contributing author to another book. So, I always tell people, if you've already written a chapter, why not just expand on it and make it your own memoir, make it your own book, and combine it with some tools and strategies that helped you overcome limitations and helped you get through those trials and tribulations, and share your triumphs and allow that content and that information to inspire the masses, and then you can strategize on how you want to utilize it in your business, because there's so many ways you can utilize it in your business with writing your own book. So plug yourself into an accountability group, guys, and get the right information. Don't let yourself get overwhelmed by all the information out there. And just like these did, Amy did, Kim did, Amelia has done, Celeste is on the verge of doing, Belinda did, Mira did, and Trinity is on the verge of. Like, you can too, guys. You can do. These people, including myself, we're no different than you are. If you're an aspiring first-time author, or if you're a contributing author to an already existing book, and you're not sure how to take that and become a fully published author, that's what Become a Published Author in 126 Days is. So it's a publishing mastermind, guys, where I walk you through the process step by step, as I've already talked about, and you go from idea to published book. We start May 5th of this upcoming round. There are 16 total Q&A training calls that, with the team members and the experts that come on, 16 total calls throughout our 126-day journey. Not only that, I got to add this, but you get lifetime membership. You get lifetime access to this too. So let me add this bad boy. Watch this. I'll do this real quick. Boom, 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 boom. Fast, 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 fast. Starts May 5th. Bullet lifetime access. All right. So all of that, you get lifetime access, and all that means is that every round that's launched, and I usually launch this program twice a year, you get lifetime access, meaning you don't have to pay, a fee to continue the membership. You get lifetime access. So every time we launch it, you get a burst of momentum, and that's what a lot of the authors have done, is they've used every launch as a burst of momentum to run through the finish line. You get 3 levels of accountability. You get A to Z self-publishing platform with CreateSpace, multiple experts in publishing, and you get writing coach, editors, not editors, but one editor, book launch expert, how to market your book, bestseller campaign expert, all of that stuff. So everything you need from A to Z to get your book online and start marketing it, you can go to bpa126.com to register. And the fee for their lifetime access to this program is $14.97. But through April 30th, if you've seen the event page, through April 30th, meaning through the end of the month, it's $7.97. All right, one-time payment of $7.97 that you can pay, or you can pay in 3 payments of $600. But through April 30th, you pay in 2 payments of $450. All right, so a couple of options there. And if you have any questions about the pay structure, and if you have maybe a unique situation that you might need a little flexibility on, be sure to send me an email. I'm happy to have a conversation with you about that. And if you sign up today, that's really the whole program. Another thing to keep in mind is that if you do sign up today, you do get 3 30-minute laser coaching sessions with me. So that's a $750 value. Altogether, I think it's like a $4,000, the stuff that you get. Go to bpa126.com to learn more. But everything that you get, I think it's over $4,100 value-wise, but you only pay $797 or 2 payments of $450. But that's it, guys. So I'm curious, what's possible for you when you become a published author? So just begin thinking about that for a moment. And what I'll have you do in this moment is I'm going to take you to the version of you that is a published author. Will you go there? So go into the future and imagine you are a published author. Notice what that feels like in your body. So just take a moment, take a deep breath in. Notice what that feels like in your body. To be a published author. And just notice what's opening up and what has opened up as a result of you becoming a published author. And maybe you can envision it. Maybe you can just sense the energy of it. Maybe you feel it in your body. Just notice, like, what's possible when you become a published author? What is it that, not only what's possible, but what do you want to create? Because it's, you know, it's not just, okay, what possibilities will open up, but what am I going to go after? You know, what am I going to go after? Because you got to be, like Les Brown says, you got to be hungry. You know, you got to be hungry. And you got to take your book and say, hey, listen, I've got some value here. What spaces can I put this in that would add value and allow me to expand my business as well? And so not only about, okay, what doors can open up, but also what am I willing to go get? Like, what potency can I be in order to go after the dreams and the visions that I have for my book? And the reason why my business has opened up so much as a result of becoming a published author has been because I've been willing to do the work. You got to be willing to do the work, whether that's the internal work or the external work, and taking the action that you need to take. You got to be willing to do the work. And if you're willing to do the work, and if you make the choice and you commit until you're finished, you will become a published author. And it's more simple than it ever has been in our lifetime. Now, back in the day, when there were only these huge publishing houses, you would write a book by writing a manuscript and trying to sell it to these huge publishing houses. And they would either have to say yes or no, and then they would buy the rights to your book, meaning that they would own the content, and then they can redistribute it any way that they want. And you would get a small royalty fee for every book that was sold. Now, these days, anybody can do it because online publishing or on-demand publishing has just exploded. And so you don't need a big publishing house to accept your book. And not only that, but when you self-publish, you own the rights to your book. So nobody else owns the rights to it. You get a higher profit on your books than you do if you were to just get a small royalty fee. And you get to determine how your book opens up opportunities for you. So many things can happen, guys. And if you've been inspired at all by this webinar, by this presentation, I invite you to take this journey with us and jump in and become a published author. And even if it takes you 126 days or 250 days, become a published author. Like, leave this world with something that let it know that you are here. Like, leave this world with a little legacy, and maybe even a big legacy. And a small legacy that you can leave is by writing a book that you published, that you wrote, you know, that your kids get to read, that their kids get to read, that their kids get to read. Think about that. You know, we get a short haul on planet Earth, depending on how well we take care of ourselves. And why not leave something that can last the test of time? Unless, like, you know, a gigantic meteor shower, your book would burn if you tried to, if you wanted it to last through a meteor shower, it wouldn't last through the test of time then, because the meteor shower would just burn your book. It'd burn my book too, because it's made of paper. It'd burn all the books, basically. It'd burn the whole, if it was big enough, what I'm saying is, if it were big enough, this meteor shower that we're talking about, if it's a big enough meteor shower, it's going to knock out planet Earth, and there's going to be no books on planet Earth. Anyway, tangent. Sorry about that. Tangent. I want to ask, are there any questions before we wrap up here? We have just a few minutes before we wrap up. I'm going to open up the lines here in a moment, and if you do have any questions, speak now or forever hold your peace. Hold on, guys. Un momento.
Unmuted. Sofern, höre ich.
I think I hear somebody. Hello? Are there any questions? I'm going to start unmuting some folks. Are there any questions that you have? Feel free to open up your mic if you have any questions. Anybody?
I actually wanted to thank you for this webinar. It was very informational. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Who is this?
This is Karina. Sorry.
Hi, Karina. Yeah, you're welcome. So for those of you who are members and are ready to start on May 5th, just be sure to prep yourself by not only watching this webinar again, but take some time to write your vision story. Take the time to write the outcomes that you would like to have as a result of being a published author. Set yourself up to win. And for those of you who are going to be new to our journey, we look forward to working with you. We look forward to playing and creating with you and having this adventure with you. So any last questions or comments before we wrap up? All right, you guys, well, you rock. Go to bpa126.com, bpa126.com to get all the details and to register. Take good care, guys, and I look forward to reading your book very soon.